Welcome to the Quilt Show, everyone. How many of you like to work with panel fabrics? Okay, just a couple of you. Well, before you poo-poo panel fabrics, check out all the possibilities that's possible with a panel. It's going to be a panel-palooza. And now, your hosts for the Quilt Show, Alex Anderson and Ricky Timms.
Welcome to the Quilt Show, everyone. I've got a question for Alex and for the audience. I want to know if you've got somebody in your life that you kind of just can't do without just to get things done. Yes. I have somebody in my life that I can't do without just to get things done. And she's our guest on the Quilt Show today. We'll tell you all about it, but please meet Cyndi McChesney.
Hey, Cyndi! Good to see you.
Howdy. All right, so let me spill all the beans right away. Cyndi is the administrative assistant for me and Justin at rickytimms.com. Right. So you work with me all the time on logistical things, right? So I know Cyndi real well, and she's a great quilter. That's a bonus.
Yes.
All right, but
now I know Cyndi because for several years we did your super seminars, and it's over. Wow. And Cyndi and I, when we're supposed to be paying attention and hanging on to every word you say, we're back there.
Yeah.
And in 2015, I found out you won an award.
I did. I won the NQA Certified Teacher of the Year.
Woohoo! That is a big deal.
It was a big deal.
And I knew Cyndi taught at the local quilt shop. Where do you live?
I live in Canyon City, Colorado, and I teach at First Stitches.
And I said, we got to get you on the show.
Yeah, and then you said, what big deal do you teach?
What's the big aha?
That everybody goes, oh, I love this.
Right, and believe it or not, it's what to do with panels.
Okay, well, let's look, before we learn more about you, let's look at the first panel quilt that you brought, and that looks like that's straight from Texas.
It does, but it's really an ode for my daughter.
Oh.
My daughter is a farrier, and I saw that panel. I'll show you the full panel in a little bit here. But what caught my eye was the cowboy boots, because my daughter's cowboy boots look just like that. They're usually crusted with mud, and they have holes in them, and they're pretty well worn. And I thought, I have to get that panel and play with it and do something for my daughter.
And I mean, I would not look at that panel as I can imagine it and even think of something this wonderful.
Thank you.
Totally. And so,
and it's got so many other elements in it as well. So the way you've treated the different elements from the panel, you've featured all of those different elements.
And there are horseshoes on there, so as a tribute again to my daughter who is a farrier.
That's great. All right, now let's look at the next one. Blue Santa.
Well, Blue Santa is actually what not to do with a panel.
Okay.
It was the very first panel quilt that I did. I had a student ask me, said, I bought all these panels. I don't know what to do with them. You need to teach a class.
There you go. Well, that's how it happens many times.
That's how it happens a lot of times. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to teach a class, I think I better figure out what to do with panels. And I got that one, and I started going, and I probably should have stopped before I got to the white and blue border, and it would have been great. But I was having so much fun that I just kept going. And that's really what not to do with panels, and we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Okay, but in the reality of that, as we look at the full quilt there, tell me really what's the problem?
I think the panel gets lost.
There's so much going on. There's so much drama everywhere else.
Exactly. There's so much going on. And I think that the scale got a little bit too big. As the quilt got bigger, the scale got bigger.
And I'm going to say, it's good to critique your own work, but I bet if the crowd out there were asked, audience, you still think it's a pretty quilt? Absolutely.
I like how it blends.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
And students say that all the time. Oh, but I love it. Well, that's great, but don't do it this way.
All right, well, how do we do it? Let's look at this next one. That's really different.
The little juvenile jungle quilt, the gray and red and black, came about because I received a gift as your administrative assistant from P&B Fabrics.
Oh.
Okay.
On the phone with somebody one time who wanted to know how to send fabrics to the quilt show for the two of you.
It would be Julie Scribner.
Okay, it would have been Julie. And
who works with us now.
Oh, excellent. She said, do you like fabric? And I said, oh, of course I do. And she said, well, I'll send you a couple of fat quarters. Well, I got a box full of fat quarters, and I had all these red, gray, and black. And when I saw that panel, I thought, now I know what I'm going to do with all that red, gray, and black, and just started playing with it. If you look carefully, you'll see there are about 25 different grays, 25 different blacks, and 25 different reds.
I like that quilt a lot.
It's fun, and I just had some fun playing with it. That's really what panels are about, is just to have fun.
Well, and I like it because it's so integrated. It really is integrated.
Yeah.
All right, and the next one, bright colors.
The next one, bright colors, a little owl family I saw at the shop one day, and I had been dying to try those squiggles that Alex does in a lot of her quilts. And I was looking.
They're in the border. They're in the border.
They're in the border, and I was looking for a project for the National Quilting Weekend. I always do a project at the store. And I wanted to teach those squiggles. So that's how that quilt came about. Just having fun with the little squiggles. And there is actually a squiggle motif in that fabric. So when you look carefully at the panel, you'll see that little squiggle motif. And a lot of times that's where I get my hints on what to do with the panel.
Okay. Now you do many things, and I love that this next quilt we're going to look at is what you're kind of doing right now, personally or professionally?
Personally.
Okay.
Wow.
I want to be designing, and I love geometric shapes. So I have been studying faithfully my Sally Collins book on drafting and the episode that she did on the quilt show, and I have her DVD, and I just love her. I have been able to take one workshop with her and learn so much. So that was my first effort at drafting my own quilt.
And I want to point out too that you're a long arm quilter. You bring quilts in for hire. Beautiful
Thank you.
work on that.
Really happy with that one.
And then we want to look at one more quilt, which I think it's you said it's from a class, and it's got a great fun name. Tell everybody about that.
Well, I do a class called Reheated Leftovers. Because we all have scraps that for whatever reason we can't seem to part with them, and we have bags and baskets and boxes.
No, we don't. You have an issue, Cyndi.
I do. And so a couple of years ago, I thought, I've got to start doing something with these quilts, and I decided that I would just start creating quilts from these scraps with no rhyme or reason, no plan, just start sewing and put it together. So that was actually the second pattern that I came out with. It's called Foursquare, and I name most of my reheated leftovers after children's games.
So when you travel for guilds and the guild person calls you, because not everybody lives in your neighborhood,
right?
Do you talk to the guild person and try and customize the best class for their guild's needs, or how does that work?
A lot of times people have heard about what I'm doing, so that's kind of how that works. But I do have other things that I do, so I will ask, what are you looking for? What kind of program? And, inevitably the question is, well, what do you do? So, we'd get into a discussion about that.
Yeah, and we have time for a little short story. Cyndi happens to be like the only person I know on the planet that has ran over herself with her own car. Tell us about that.
Well, I was having a very lovely weekend at home by myself and thought that I would get a whole lot done on this lovely last weekend of February. My plan was to take the dog for a hike, come home, clean out the garage, and then I can't even remember what the third project was because I was so excited about having this weekend to myself, and it was a beautiful day. And I jumped in the car with the dog, backed the car out of the garage. Oh, I know what the other project was. It was cleaning out the deep freezer for my mom. Okay. And I had tossed the towels over my shoulder, which had landed on the hood of the car, which I didn't see. And I backed out of the garage, driveway's on a bit of a slant, and realized I had left the towels on the hood of the car. So I thought that I put the car in park, which was actually drive. And I jumped out of the car to run in the garage and get the towels off the hood, and the car started moving forward. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to crash into that deep freezer and go into my parents' bedroom. So I tried to squeeze between the garage wall and the car.
Like Superman?
Like Superwoman.
Right, but it broke her hip.
It
did. So
the car hit a filing cabinet, which was fine. Didn't hit the deep freezer or my mom and dad's bathroom. And it hit me though. And I hobbled into the house and texted a friend. And I said, I think I might have just fractured a hip.
And you did, but you're doing okay now.
I'm doing great.
So listen, everybody, if you like Cyndi, let me just tell you, you can't have her. She's mine forever and ever because she does a great job.
But she does travel for guilds.
As a matter of fact, she's going to do a great job in the next segment too.
Yes, she is.
What are we going to do?
Well, you say the first thing is learning to look at the panel and square it up and get it right so that you can play with it appropriately.
And to get some ideas of where you're going, because you don't have a starting point. You just have a panel.
You're going to do first or second segment with Cyndi. Yay!
Yay.
Stick around, everyone.
Woohoo! Welcome back, everyone. We're here today with Cyndi McChesney, and I happen to know that quilters are kind of in two categories. There's the, I can fly by the seat of my pants and be willy-nilly, and there's other quilters that really feel much more comfortable with the math and the measuring and so forth. And with these panels that we're doing today, you say that's where people get hung up with, is how to deal with the math or make them work. So talk about that.
Well, in my opinion, there are two kinds of panels. The first would be a large panel like this, where you kind of look at it and go, okay, I can slap a few borders on and I have a quilt, which is great if you need a present in a hurry. You can also be a little bit creative with that by doing pieced blocks or a pieced border or some different pieced borders. But the first thing that happens is you get this panel, and the first thing you find out is, it's not square.
All right, it's not square. What do you do about that, right?
And the second thing you find out is that these measurements don't work at all. I want to cut it so that I have blue showing, and it's like 21 3/8 by 54 and
4/16
or something. 5/16. So it's kind of like, what do I do now to make it so that I can put 5-inch blocks around it or 6-inch blocks around it?
Sure.
So the first thing you have to do is you have to get it square, which is where I use an iron and an inordinate amount of steam and lifting weights to get that to happen. And then the second thing is to get the math to work.
Right. All right. So now let's look at the other panel, because it's a little different. This is the one where there's a lot of motifs, a lot of themes put together in kind of a montage of ideas.
And these panels, I find, tend to stump people a little bit more because of exactly what you said. There's a lot of motifs. You can't just add some borders to this and have it be something interesting.
Right.
It kind of looks very hodgepodge or like you had no plan. So I actually prefer this kind of panel because it allows for more creativity, but it also requires more math. And of course, we all know math is a 4-letter word for most quilters.
It is.
They don't like that.
I want to point out that this panel, this part of the panel that's right here, it's not in your quilt that you made for your daughter.
That's correct.
Right? The other elements are there, but this element is not. Well, and this is not.
That's not there either.
As well. So you can choose. You don't have to use the whole thing.
No, you don't have to use the whole thing. And actually, I fell in love with this panel because of this section right here. This just so reminded me of my daughter. It kind of looked like where her boots usually ended up when she came in at the end of the day with the stuff thrown on it. And
so it was more important than the other.
It was far more important.
All right, so let's talk then about all of the willy-nilly wonkiness and how to fix that. And you've got a panel over there that I think really had some distortion on it.
It does, and I just got this panel, and I absolutely love it because it is just so cute.
Look at the audience; they're out there giggling and like, I think I want some of that.
It's really adorable. This is a Lorelei Designs, and for those of you who live in Southern Colorado, Lorelei just moved to Florence, Colorado.
Oh, nice.
So she's right in our neck of the woods. When I look at a panel like this, for me, this panel screams sampler quilt.
Right.
Because every one of these little puppies could be inside the center of a block.
As long as that block has a nice chunky center.
As long as it has a
Right.
nice chunky center and I make it big enough, because these are fairly large sections. The one thing that I would do first is I would cut off this little border print, which is not on that side, it's only on this side.
I see
and I
that.
would cut it off because I want to save it.
Yeah.
I might use it somewhere.
You might use it somewhere.
I
Yep.
might not. So that would be the first thing that I do. The next thing that I do is I would cut out the individual blocks. And I'm just going to cut this one out for our purposes.
Yeah, this will be a little Swiss cheese. It's like, don't do this at home, but we're going straight to this one because you can see that green
The
border.
green, it really is going to show up for you, and it's going to make a lot of sense as to why I'm going to do this real quick
Do I
here.
need to move this for you right here? I think it's
Oh,
probably...
calculator probably
Yeah, and I
anyway.
don't want you to cut that because we're going to need that
We're
in a
going to
minute.
definitely need that.
Well,
So
let's look at actually show this on the block itself to see if it's...
So what I do is I take my ones of my ruler to the upper right-hand corner of my block, and I just take one side and lay it down the outside of that green, and you can immediately see this block is not square by any stretch of the imagination.
All right.
And I've been asked why that happens, and there are a couple of reasons. One is that fabric is taken from a roll onto the bolt. I don't know, have you ever seen that?
Yes.
It's pretty cool.
They fold it and it
They
rolls.
fold it
yeah.
and they bring it down through this thing and they roll it up on the bolt. Well, in that process, things get really shifted and twisted, and then it sits on the bolt for who knows how long. The other reason is that sometimes they actually get printed off grain.
Okay.
It just happens. So you have to make it so, I mean, obviously that's pretty hard to make that work, and we don't want to cut that one square because then maybe the next one's not going to work
Right.
either. So the first thing I would do, like I said, I would get rid of this little border print here because I want to save it. So I'm just going to take that right off, and I'm only
Right.
going to go just beyond it so that I can...
So for now, that's okay?
That's fine for now. Mhm.
Okay.
And then I'm actually going to cut this square out so that it is cut on the green, right on the edge of the green. I don't care that it's going to come out not square. That's not important to me right now. I really need to just get it out of the fabric so that it's something I can use. So we're going to go this way.
Okay.
Don't want to catch you with this rotary because I don't think you'd keep me
It's
on board
okay.
if I
No,
made you bleed.
You're gone. Out of here.
All right, so one little snip here, and we're good to go.
All
Okay.
right. Should I move this out of the way now?
We can get rid of that
Okay, all right.
because for our purposes, we're done cutting.
Okay.
And the next thing I do is I go to the ironing surface because, as I mentioned, we already know this is not square. I want to just give it a quick little touch with the iron so I can work with it. I brought my own iron today because I know that you do not like water in your irons.
Well, yeah, personally, I'm a squirt bottle guy with a dry iron, so that's fine.
For our purposes, though, the steam is essential. So what happens, I'm going to set that down, but not
Okay.
on your cutting board. Like I've shown you, if I go down one side, I can see that this is really off. You can even see it here if you can see the
About a
lines on the
quarter
roll.
inch.
It's pretty skewed. I want to get a feel for where it's skewed, and what I see is that I need to bring this side of the panel kind of down and in. So I'm actually going to flip it upside down. And I want to be now with the steam, and I tell my students never iron, only press.
Oh, yeah,
Except now we're going to actually
Except now
iron.
we're really, look at you using some elbow grease there,
I'm
girl.
going to really get some steam going here because it's kind of important that I get this to move. And I want to get it to move to a point where I can make it be square. So again, my ones are in my upper right-hand corner, not quite there, but oh, look how much better already.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still a little bit off, okay? So I now want to take this and I want to go over here like this.
So you're basically just pushing that fabric and doing a bit of distortion, letting the moisture reposition the fibers.
Exactly. I just want to get it so that I've got it as close to square as I possibly can.
It looks pretty good.
That's pretty good. I'm still a little bit off here, and I
Wouldn't
would.
you just shave that off with your rotary cutter?
I'm going to fight with
She
it a little
says
bit
no.
more. No, I'm going to fight with it just a touch more because I really want to get it so that it's going to make me happy.
I'm impressed because I would have just gone, Mr. Rotary Cutter, you're coming over here now.
And you know what? That's going to give you
It
more
says
opportunity to do math.
a slighter, smaller block, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
because you're going to end up squaring it out, and I'm going to just turn it so I can see it. I don't work so well upside down, I guess. And we're getting there, but we're still not quite there. Just, play with it. It takes a little bit of persuasion, but we're going to get it to a point where it's pretty close. And I'd say we're there.
Okay. Yay. That's great.
So that's
now
where
what?
we start. Now, I'm looking at this, and it's measuring 7 5/8 by 7 3/4.
Okay. I still want to get my rotary cutter and shave off something.
Now we're getting our rotary cutter.
Okay. Yay. All right.
Before we start rotary cutting this, I'm going to say, okay, well, how big do I need it to be? What am I going to do with it? And if I'm going to put it in a block, I have to get it to a measurement that works with the math of the block that I'm going to put it in. Now, if I'm not going to put it in a particular block, then perhaps all I need to do is get it to 7.5 inches square.
And be done.
And be done and work from there. Because no one says the blocks in your quilt have to be a specific size. It's your quilt.
Yeah, if they're all 7 3/4, they're all 7 3/4, and that fits, right?
And that's great.
Let's take a look at this big grid that you've got, because it also relates.
This one? Or
that guy. Because that also, I'm going to move this over now and get it out of our way, because this really relates to the big panels or even the small panels.
Really, any panels.
Right. So describe what we're looking at with the gray line.
So what I did here with the gray line is I went to that little owl panel that we showed first, and I measured just from the outside edge of that blue print on the panel, and I came up with 22 by 37.
Well, and what kind of math are you going to do with that? See?
Yeah.
Because I can't divide 22 very easily. I mean, I could do a 7-inch block, but that's 21.
Right.
So I'm kind of messed up there. All right.
And 37 isn't going to divide by 7
Not
either.
very well.
So the first thing I do when I look at a panel like that is I say, okay, what makes sense in terms of math to put around the panel? Now, I know for a lot of people, they're just going to slap on some borders, and that's fine. It's kind of boring.
No, but you're going to do a much better job.
We're going to just have a little fun with it. So what I would do next is say, okay, I want 5-inch blocks, for example. If I want 5-inch blocks, I have to get the quilt to a place where I can divide by 5. Now remember, I'm working with finished sizes. We're never working with cut sizes. So I drew my panel on here in gray, and then I figured out how big does it have to be to do 5-inch blocks.
Here you have 25 by 40 with the red, and so the red is 25 inches wide, which is 5
5-inch blocks.
And 40, is that 8?
8.
See, I was in Texas public schools, I had to think. And then we've got the blue one that you've made it out to 30 by 42, and those could each be 6-inch blocks.
6-inch blocks.
Yeah,
So you just have to kind of decide, and that's, well, I call that a coping strip. We're going to add strips to the side of the quilt in order to get it.
I'm going to take a step back. Come with me, because let's look at this owl quilt. Because indeed, if you look very carefully, the width of this on the side is narrower than this. You may not have noticed it until now, because it's not that obvious, but it allowed you to make these 5-inch blocks to go all the way around. And that's where the math comes in.
That's where the math comes in.
And that's where people are able to really take the panels, make sense out of it. If you're taking a little piece, make it as big as you need to be to fit. If you're taking the big panel, and you do the same.
Same thing.
Woohoo! What do you think, everyone? That's great. Well, when we come back, Cyndi is going to take these principles now and show you how to design a quilt so it's not quite as standard and perhaps as ordinary as it could be. You can shake it up, and that's what we're going to do after the break, okay?
It'll be fun.
All right, don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, everyone. And I have to tell you, Cyndi, in that last segment, I've never quite seen fabric beat into submission. You have a way with fabric.
I do. I'm the fabric beater.
Hey, listen, you guys, Christmas is around the corner, and this panel is just great for a Christmas project, and you're going to show us what to do with it. But there are a ton of really neat holiday panels out there.
Absolutely, and they are really fun, and people buy them, and again, once again, it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with that?
Right.
So when I saw this, the first thing I wanted to do was create a table runner for our dining room table. So I took these rather unsquare squares. They were measuring 8 3/4 by 9.
Oh, there you go.
There's a nice number to work with.
Yeah.
And did my math, brought them down so that I could have 8-inch finished blocks, which I divided in half so that I could put 2 little stars with each one of my little characters. And half of them are facing one way and half the other, so that if you're on the other side of the table, you get to not look at all upside down people. The little snowflake motif throughout this table runner comes from
right
the top,
there.
these little pieces that a lot of times people aren't sure, so they just throw them away.
What, did you have to trim it down?
Trim it down.
Okay.
They ended up being 2 inches.
Okay, so here's the thing, you guys. If you're new to drafting, and don't be afraid of it, if this is 8 inches, figure it at 8 inches, figure this at 4 inches, then go add your 1/2 inch to it.
Exactly.
You know, if you get that 1/2 inch in there and all, forget it.
No, you can't draft that way. You have to draft with finished numbers.
Yeah, figure
works
it out.
much
I don't
better.
like the word draft.
Okay, figure it out.
You got to figure it out.
So I have a little drawing of this particular one where I was first beginning to play, and you can see my little 8-inch square here, and then my 2 4 inches.
Okay.
Played with a little sashing in between, figured out what I could do with this kind of checkerboardy thing.
Now on here,
I did, yep.
You have 2 checkerboards.
And I changed
and
it.
And on here, you have 1.
Right.
But then probably this is the size of what 2 of them would have been.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep, sometimes I change my mind.
Okay.
Maybe I got lazy.
I don't want to piece that.
I don't want that many small squares in there. And then a coping strip or kind of a balance frame strip around to figure out the math so that I could get to this outer border with the checkerboard and the stars.
And it's what you did back there.
Same thing back there, exactly.
So really, if you haven't worked with drafting paper, you want either 4 to the inch, which is what this is, or 8 to the inch, and this becomes your roadmap.
It does become your roadmap, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Then you did some other fun things too.
I did. I made a set of placemats so that everybody at the table could have somebody to eat dinner with, and a set of pot holders. And my mom keeps trying to steal this entire set because she thinks it would make a really nice Christmas gift for her.
Well, okay, Mom, here's one gift, here's another gift, and here's another gift.
Exactly.
Now, you do something else when you teach that I think is really cool, and I want to pull these up because, okay, we've taken the panels as the main players, but they can be the secondary players.
They can be secondary
so
players.
this is really
Absolutely.
awesome.
You'll grab that little dice or whatever they are, poker chips.
Which one do you want?
Let's do the poker chips. So a lot of times you do have a small motif in your panel. We showed that Western panel, and there were some small motifs in there. And if you look at the quilt, you'll see that what I did was I took that small piece and I squared it, and you can fit it inside of another quilt block. So if you've got a big open space or something that's normally a big square or maybe even a 4-patch, think about just turning it into a blank canvas so that you can then surround your motif with a quilt block, and it makes for something very interesting when you do that.
Okay, here's another one.
Yeah, if you've got bigger blocks like our puppy dogs, you can trim them down, and they also can be the center or focal point of a quilt block. So they are secondary players, but that makes for a very interesting, fun
What a great
quilt.
baby quilt too, right?
Absolutely.
And then here's yet another one. You take these, well, when you teach locally, right?
I do. I haven't figured out how to get them on an airplane yet, but it's all good. And you can just play with, how much do I want to trim down? And maybe I don't want to trim the bottom, so maybe I trim, this way. I just get it to fit where I want it to fit so that it fits within that 6-inch block. And this was 7 when we started, so not really taking that much off of it to fit into something like that.
Right.
So you just start looking for quilt blocks that have canvas, what I call canvas in the middle, where you can fit in the little side motifs from a panel or just all the little different parts of a panel.
So how readily available are these panels? Where do you look?
They are everywhere. And I am one of those people who poo-pooed panels for quite a long time because I thought, oh my gosh, what the heck would you do with that? And now that I've gotten started with this, it's almost become an addiction. This puppy panel, when I saw it the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta have that. It's so cute.
Well, what I love too is when you teach this, and if she were to teach us at your guild, you're doing something playful, but there's some brains behind the whole thing.
There's absolutely brains, and the smoke gets going because you got people doing math and they don't like it. And one of the required tools is a calculator and some graph paper because you've got to be able to work those numbers. You can't just cut it up and say, okay, I'm going to do this, because you might find out it doesn't fit.
Well, I have to tell you right now, I will look at panels very differently.
They're fun. They are really fun to play with, and there's a lot of different things you can do with them. I've got a project bag and a few other things that I've done with panels just to make it something different.
Well, I can't wait to see what you come up with next, because she gets challenged by her students. I think they said, we want to do this, and then she goes and figures it out.
That's the challenge.
They're very lucky to have you.
Well, they're lots of fun too, so.
I know, I love students. Oh, wait, hold on, we're not done yet. The bag.
The bag.
Your travel bag.
My project bag.
Tell us about this bag.
Well, I like to carry lots of stuff when I go to teach a class. So
Quilters do too. They're taking classes.
We all got to have lots of things. And I had this fun little panel that was fairly repetitive, so I just used 2 sections of it, created a bag to carry my mat and my rotary cutter and some rulers, and there you go.
And you are the panel queen. Hey, this has been so much fun. Thank you for coming. We will stay connected.
Yes, ma'am.
We got history, girl.
You got it.
Well, coming up next, we have textile designer Stacy Iest Hsu. She works for Moda, and her panels are very different than what we have been talking about today. And it may even solve a couple Christmas gifts for you. Stick around, you're gonna love it.
On the next Quilt Show, Calgary, Alberta, Canada is sending us one of their best, Cheryl Arkeson.
See why she wants her work to whisper to you.
And so the terminal volume is like, hey, look at me, we're pretty too. Like it's a whisper.
Cheryl will teach us all about her improvisational slabs and curves.
Projects you can really sink your needle into.
Plus, our TQS cameras head up to Maryland to catch up with abstract artist Catherine Kleeman.
She actually looks forward to shrinking her quilts after she quilts them. See why.
We're bringing you a world of exciting tips and tricks. Join us.
Please.
Welcome back, everyone. Now, we were just hanging out with Cyndi McChesney, and she showed us how to make quilts out of panels. But Stacy, who's here today, has taken panels yet another step. So I'm very excited that we found Stacy Iest Hsu.
Correct.
Yeah, and she is here from my neck of the woods. And when we found what you were doing, we thought, you just have to be on the panel show. You're taking panels to a 3-dimensional toy or whatever, right?
Yes.
But a little history about you. How long have you been a textile designer?
For about 15 years, I've been a textile designer. And one of my first jobs was at Gymboree as a textile designer in their layette department. So I have a little bit of children's background, you could say. And then I did a lot of freelance work after that.
So you started with Moda about a year ago.
Yes.
All right. And the very first thing you did with Moda was what?
The cut and sew doll.
Okay.
And so I had come up with the prototype before through Spoonflower. They had a contest. And so I signed up for the contest. It was for plushies. And I made this doll, and it was a hit. And I got second place. I didn't get first, unfortunately.
But you placed.
But I placed.
Yeah.
But I placed. And I had such a positive feedback on the doll that I'm like, I think this could
work.
Yes, it could be something really special, and I think people would love it. So,
well, let's move back here.
Yes.
This is one of the panels, and this is just another walk in the woods. Tell us about this panel.
So this panel, it has the directions on it in the far corner. It includes a blanket front and back, the 2 dolls. They're 2 plushies.
Oh, they have dolls too.
They do. Every child has to have a plushie. And then the pillowcase, the pillow, and the skirt for
so you could dress the doll.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yes.
So let's take a look at it all cut up and all stuffed and all ready to go. I mean, that is so cute. I can't stand it. You better check your suitcase when you're out of here, right? So I want to have you walk us through what you can do, because there's more to it than just cutting it out and sewing it together. You've got some tips and tricks.
Absolutely. So the mindset when I did design these is to make it very simple for people to sew and make. They can make it in a day. It's just that simple. But the beauty of these dolls is that you can personalize them. And so in this, so the first thing is you have the panel, and then what you want to do is add your embellishments before you start cutting out your dolls.
Oh yeah, that would be a smart move.
Yeah, so you can use the hoop like this, and you can sew, hand embroider all the little details like this. Here I just did the little stitch, and then you have the French knots. And it just really adds a personal touch, and it doesn't just seem like a bolt of a panel of fabric that you bought.
That you've cut up and sewn together.
Yeah, and you can, with the embroidery, you can add the child's name that's receiving them. You can add their birth date or any special memory or something that makes it uniquely for that child. And
I think it would be really fun to make it your own thing, and you could do all sorts of manipulations to the fabric.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the beauty of this. With each aspect of the panel, the dolls, the blankets. Yep.
So then, any tricks here?
The next step would be then you cut out your little panels. After you've done all your embroidering and embellishments.
Let's hold that down there.
You cut out your panel, and then you pin it around, and slowly, I recommend this for everybody because there's lots of little curves, and slowly sew around the doll, leaving a little bit of an opening. And
a 1/4 inch?
Yes.
Okay.
A 1/4 inch. And then after you do that, after you've sewed it around, what you want to do is you clip close to the edge of the doll, close to the edge of the stitching there, and in the corners you want to make sure, and everybody forgets this because I get a lot of emails that say, my doll's puckering at the neck, or my doll's puckering under the arms and I don't know what to do. The key is making sure you put those little cuts in there to give it some ease so that it won't pucker when you turn it inside out.
Okay.
Yes. So that's very important. And then with this, so this is the skirt for just another walk in the woods.
Cute.
Another way that you can embellish this is putting a little lace at the bottom. And it really adds a detail. I mean, you can even get crazy and put lace around the arms.
But do it before you sew, before you sew it together like this.
Correct.
Well, yeah, duh. Okay, that's kind of a dumb thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what about this?
This is the band that goes in here. You want to sew this up to the, like here after you've added your embellishment, and then you take your band with your safety pin, and then you put it right through there and gather it up and put it on your doll.
And so look at this.
There
this
you
is
have
so
it. And I added a bow to her head because I just think it's so super cute.
Yeah, so you've got the quilt, the dolls, the animals, the pillow. It's all right there.
It's a full set.
Now, the thing that's interesting is that not only did you design this, you started designing coordinating fabric so you could do a whole room, and you were not a quilt maker.
No.
And you became one in 6 months. How many quilts did you knock out?
About 6. I had to go to market and I had to make 6 quilts. I didn't have to, but I wanted to learn how to quilt. I want to know what goes behind making a quilt so that I can make my products better.
That's exactly right, because designing textiles, quilt maker, they are two different things.
Yes.
That's very, very smart of you.
Yes.
Very smart of you.
Yes.
Okay, now talk about these. So cute.
So this is Farm Fun. This collection is all about the farm, and I personalized this little guy. This is a cow. I found a sound box, and you can find it online. Just enter sound box, and you can personalize it. It's this little box
just keep it
there.
right there. Yeah.
And then you squeeze it, and it says Mama Loves You. You can personalize it so that you can put your voice on it, give it to your child or your grandchild, and it has such a personal effect to it. So,
you know, we have a book that we send our granddaughter and we read to it. She loves that book because it has our voices in it. And you're saying you can just get that online?
Yes.
And it's called Soundbox?
Yeah, you just enter Soundbox for stuffed toys.
Okay.
And it comes up automatically.
And then the quilt that goes with this, tell us about this quilt.
This quilt, it has all the fabrics from the collection. It's inspired by the farm. I was raised on a farm, so it has a very personal feeling for me. And it coordinates with these stuffed animals, so you can make an adorable nursery or children's room with the fabric.
And again, you're with Mona.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so, what's this panel called?
This is Little Red.
Okay.
This was my first collection with Mona.
Oh, really?
Yes. So she's very, very special to me. I love her so much. Again, we personalized her with the embroidery. On the quilt, we added these little embroidery floss and kind of made it a little bit puffier. So you can do something like that if you're not a quilter, like I was not a quilter at the beginning of the year.
Are you a quilter now?
Well, they say I am now.
Okay, cool.
They say once you make a quilt, you're always a quilter.
And so tell us about the fabric line that goes with this.
This is Little Red. Her fabric line has an adorable conversational about Little Red going through the forest. And then it has a lot of wonderful prints that kind of pose as solids. It's a great collection with greens and aquas and reds, a wonderful little girl's room.
I think so.
Yeah.
Now, recently at my house, we had a mermaid party. One of my best friend's daughters is expecting the same day as my daughter. And they love mermaids, so we had a mermaid party. And the mom of the mother-to-be made this. It is so cute. Now, tell us about her little fins. Or not fins, what scales.
Yeah, so we embellished her. This is another wonderful way to embellish by adding the sequins. And I have to admit, I was a little afraid to sew sequins because I had never done that. But once I started, I'm like, I could do this all day. It's so much fun. And the result is just
the best.
It's so sparkly.
Okay,
Everybody loves sparkle.
I have to do this, you guys. I have to do this. She's got legs! She's got legs! She could just be a regular girl, too. So wonderful. Okay.
She's a 3-in-1. She has her swimsuit, her skirt, and her fins. So she can go everywhere.
Oh, so cute. And then she's got her own little pillow and quilt. And this is part of the Is this on the panel, too?
This is on the panel. It's everything you see in each section is on the panel.
But you did do fabric that coordinates with this.
Correct.
Let's take a look at that quilt.
Yes. And so that was Under the Water inspired. It coordinates with our little friend Coral here perfectly. And for this guy too, you can also quilt the panel quilt on here. If you're a quilter and you want to go crazy, you can add binding and stitching, and it makes a wonderful effect to it.
Now, we didn't talk about this before, so forgive me. Are there free patterns available for the quilts that you did here on the Moda site?
Because I'm a beginner, I've used other people's quilts or more. I'm still learning, but eventually, I promise you, I want to start designing quilts because I'm just having so much fun in the quilting world.
And what is your website?
It's StacyIestHshu.com.
Fabulous. Oh my gosh. What did you guys think about that? Yes. Now I have to say, Shelly, our producer, told me that she would pay me $20 if I would go, hello, Dolly. Well, hello, Dolly. It's so nice to have you back where you belong. Okay, I get my $20 now, Shelly.
What a fun show. Thank you so much. I mean, when we met at Houston, at Spring Market, it was Spring Market.
Utah.
What you have done in less than a year, I mean, we're not quite sure when this is going to air, but basically less than a year is amazing. And I know my 3 granddaughters will fight for this. It's a matter of which one, right?
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
And we also want to thank Miss Cyndi McChesney for sharing her information on those panel quilts. That was great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Miss Stacy, for everything that you brought to the show today as well.
What a fun show. Just perfect for the holidays.
I had a great time. I hope you had a great time. And remember, it's a new day every day. All right. Stay tuned for the after set. Cyndi McChesney shares a special musical treat.
You know, Cyndi, it's been so much fun getting to know you over the course of, what, 4 years?
4 years.
4 years, yeah. And you're like an onion in a sweet way. You see the outside layer, and then it peels, and then there's another layer. Oh, you're an award-winning teacher. Oh, then there's another layer, because you are very non-boastful about yourself. And I was amazed when I learned about your music abilities.
Well, thank you.
And we share that in common, so we've asked you to play a little bit for us today on your flute.
Flute. Okay, flute. C flute.
You've got 3 flutes, so let's just try one for now.
Okay, one's good.
One at a time.
I'm not real good at more than one at a time.
Lovely.
Nice.
That's great. That's great. Now here's the thing. Cyndi, you teach flute lessons.
I do. Currently no students.
I mean, you had a student that went to
Sure,
state.
you'll take one.
Yeah.
You'll take one.
I'll take one.
Okay.
But you also still take lessons.
Yes, I do.
And you're in a couple of community
Tell us what you're in,
bands,
yeah.
or-
I play principal flute with the Southern Colorado Community Band. I play in the Pueblo Municipal Band in the summertime. I'm part of a fabulous flute trio out of Pueblo called the Jewel Tones.
Oh, cool.
And I also play occasionally with the CSU Pueblo Flute Choir and the Pikes Peak Flute Choir.
I think we've got a little clip of the...
Pikes Peak Flute Choir.
Let's just take a listen to that. Awesome.
Nice.
That's beautiful. Now, this instrument, when you brought it out, everybody on the set was going, what?
What is that?
I know what it is, but not everybody's ever seen something like that. What is it?
It looks like plumbing. Yeah, this is a bass flute, and I used to think that it was as big as they got, but now there are contra and sub-contra bass flutes, which are truly
air
amazing.
That it must take to blow into those
I had the opportunity to play one a couple of weeks ago, and I thought after the first measure and a half I was going to pass out. So they do take a lot of air, but they're really fun.
Isn't that gorgeous? Oh my God. Goosebumps, right?
You gonna try it?
I'm not going to try. Oh. No, I'm
I'll
not
hold
gonna try.
it. Can I hold it?
You can. You
won't.
can.
No, don't drop, it's not mine.
All right. Send us out with a little piccolo.
Let's see if I can even play piccolo with no warm-up today.
Yeah, really. That's great. That'll work. So, Cyndi, thank you so much for sharing your love and your passion. Thank you for all you do for Justin and I, for sure.
Absolutely.
And,
it's fun.
And thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks so much.
You bet. Thank you.